watching Hearts of Purpose. My name is Gail Nordskog, and my guest today is Lili Baehr, who is very involved in the ministry of Movieguide, which has been changing Hollywood. We're going to be able to hear that story about how this ministry came together. But first of all, I want you to get to know Lili, get to know where she came from and where her heart is, and all about her family and her husband. So, Lili, thank you so much for taking the time to see me. And what I'd love to do, maybe we should start right where we are right now, and then go back so they know who you are. You just got done your 24th annual Movieguide Gala.
Correct.
Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. Every year we invite the directors, producers, writers, studio executives of the movies that we feel, embody our values. Christian values, American values. And so we throw this wonderful Hollywood event that is kind of in contrast to the other award shows, because what people come away from that is they feel it's very inspirational, gives them hope, it gives them information that they can use when they make their next movie. And the whole idea is to encourage those currently making movies, Hollywood movies, that reach so many millions of people, when they're, these people are what we call the green lighters. They're the ones that make a decision on the next movie being made. So the more of those people that we can influence, the more of the kinds of movies we want made will be made. And we're seeing evidence of it already. So we're seeing a great number of movies aimed at families. When we started, there were only very, very few, and now the number has increased tremendously. Now, my husband's the one that, does all the stats, does the report to the entertainment industry, and every year gives that report to the people sitting in the audience. And this last one was super fun. We had Dolly Parton receiving an award for a lovely movie she made called Coat of Many Colors. We had Lily Tomlin came to give her the award. We honored a lot of wonderful movies like The 33, and, which was about the miners in Chile that survived like 60-something days, and just real miracle stories. And these are Hollywood movies with a Christian message, so that's the amazing part of it, And this weekend, we had Risen, about the resurrection, another centurion story about the resurrected Christ. And then we have The Young Messiah coming out this weekend. So wonderful movies. And we are working behind the scenes to help those producers, even in the initial stages where they will take a book and turn it into a movie. And with this particular one, we helped quite a bit, because we had to take this book, which was the bestseller under another name, and take it through so that it would be correct theologically. And
you're talking about The Young Messiah?
The Young Messiah.
You did a great job.
So it's a wonderful, but we do work behind the scenes, so we help them understand, the Christian audience, we help them understand the theology issues that they may not pick up on, this, instead of saying a Savior, we say the Savior. I mean, lots of things like that we see. But anyway, initially though, this is where we've arrived now in terms of our outreach to those making the decisions on what movies are being made. That is very crucial. But how we got to that point is the story of our love affair and of our ministry as we come along to the point, like last weekend, the thing aired yesterday at the Rios channel around the country and the cable channels. So.
And I would like to say I was able to be at the gala, which was excellent. It was so fun. It was really well done. And did watch it yesterday, so it was wonderful. What I'd like to do, though, is get people to know you. This is a very big ministry, and everybody looks at Hollywood. Hollywood is very powerful. It really can control the culture. And what you have been doing, like you said, you're going in and talking to studio heads. You're showing them the statistics that there are more people that are family-oriented and want to go to the movies with their children and not be embarrassed like the good old days, like when we were kids. We used to be able to do that. So let's start with you. You were born where And tell us about your family.
Okay, well, actually, I'm an immigrant because I was born in Argentina, and my father made the decision to come to America because it's the greatest country in the world. And it wasn't my mother's decision because she was very happy with all her extended family there, but she did come, and we had we came to America. My father actually escaped, didn't quite escape, but left, a very bad government of, Perón and Evita, and it wasn't a good place.
What happened in Argentina?
Well,
I know
Argentina had been a very prosperous country at one time. At the turn of the last century, it was number 6 in the entire world. If you ever go to Buenos Aires, you'll see these grand houses that are much, even bigger than some of those huge houses in America. But they became socialists, and the more they got into that, when Perón came into power, everybody knows about Evita because it was a big thing, and so it really made the thing go downhill. No, they promised the poor people anything, and they, whatever. So during that time, I mean, in terms of how we perceived that, we were not allowed. Even in our own home, we didn't talk about the government or anything. But I'll just tell you one little story about my father before he came to America. But he was a doctor and in the biggest hospital there. And when Evita died, they made everybody, all the doctors wear, a black tie, and so my father wore the most outrageous tie he could find in his closet. At the end of the week, they said to him, "Oh, they want your head. You better start complying." That's when my father said, "I'm done. I'm finished." He had studied in England. He had studied in Sweden, and he wanted to come to America, the biggest country in the world. So we were very,
Did you have trouble getting into America?
We were very well off there, so it was a bit of a setback, I have to admit, because my father, at that time, they didn't accept foreign degrees. You had to re-establish yourself as a doctor and everything, except that we went, that's why, he went New York, San Francisco, Houston, ended up in Houston because Houston didn't put any roadblocks. They said, "When can you start?" And so immediately he didn't have any setbacks. And they really treated us very well. So we all showed up in Houston, loved. So I feel like I'm a Texan by adoption. I love Houston because it grew up with me. That's the most interesting part of it. It's like when we first arrived in 1956, tiny little place, 3 tall buildings. Once the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright had said about Houston, when the only building that was the Shamrock Hilton, and he says, "I see the sham, but where's the rock?" He didn't really appreciate Houston, but my father saw the vision, and Houston is now one of the most amazing, cities in the whole country. So this all started at the very beginning when we first showed up in Houston, and we went to church, and Mother had dressed us all up in the, we always dressed alike, like little English girls. It was kind of she had more of the English style. And so some photographer from the Houston Chronicle saw us and thought, "Oh, look at these cute little girls," found out we were from Argentina and all that kind of stuff. So here's this big front cover article, 3 little pretties from the Pampas. So that goes to show you one thing, okay? Houston was a very small town. If somebody coming from Argentina was news, and that's how little it was. There is no joke. Okay, I found out many years later that when we first went to the parochial school there, no, it wasn't the parochial. The first year we went to public school, and
what grade were you in?
I was like in the 3rd, I can't remember what grade I was in, but no, I had to learn English.
I was just going to ask you that.
No, I had to learn English. And okay, I'm getting very convoluted in my stories, but I got to tell you the story where I was a reader from early on. So in Argentina, when our nanny took us to the school, we walked, and right in front, that we passed by a bookstore. And in the bookstore, there were all these wonderful books. And I remember telling my king, because for Christmas, you don't have Santa Claus, you have the Magi. And you write them a letter, and they send you, whatever. So I wanted The History of France by André Malraux. Big, thick book, tiny print, no photos, no pictures, but I just was intrigued by this book. And
But
my king that year gave it to me.
Was it in English?
No, it was in Spanish.
It was in Spanish. Okay,
but
I thought maybe that
I was
inspired
reading and
you.
everything. I mean, I wasn't reading. You know, I don't know that the book still exists, and it was in my father's library. I should bring it over, but the idea was that I love to read. Well, I came to America. I had to start all over again, so I was reading Chippy the Chipmunk, you know, and stuff like that. But I caught up.
Just a step down.
Yeah, I caught up. But it didn't take us very long, the four of us, to learn English.
Because you were immersed in it. You didn't
Yeah,
have
that's the best message.
Didn't have
and you know, Father had got it. We had an English teacher come to our house, and they were trying to teach us, but we didn't learn anything in Argentina. I don't think we learned a thing. But we did have classes, but maybe it was in the recesses of my back and my mind. But then we learned pretty quickly, you know, and the people were so kind. This is what I wanted to tell you, how kind the people were. The first year we went to public school, and somebody told me many years later, we were having dinner, and this girl said, "Oh, I went to school with you," and I said, "Oh, I didn't remember that." And she said, "Yes, I was one of my classes," and the principal of the school went to all of our classes and told them, "We have these people from another country. You should be nice to them," and all this kind of stuff. Can you imagine such a thing?
That is
That's
beautiful.
what America was like in those days. That's how beautiful it was.
That is beautiful.
And
They
so
always welcomed you.
They felt us so welcome. They were so kind to us. And I totally believe in this total immersion thing. I do not believe that, you know, that we should have bilingual education. I think they need to be phased into the American system. And, you know, kids are incredibly intelligent to begin with. God made them that way. I grew up as a Catholic, and so I went to school with the nuns, and I, for one, had a wonderful experience with my nuns.
I did too.
I love my nuns.
Okay.
They were so dedicated. They were so interested. They taught us all kinds of wonderful things like noblesse oblige, which means, you know, the same thing with much has been given, much is expected, kind of, you know. And so they have a heart for service, and they were very beautiful people. So I have nothing but wonderful things to say about it.
I know you have at least two sisters because I've met them in the past. You have a brother also?
Yes. 6 years later, a brother came.
Okay. And where do you fit in the family?
I'm the second, but my mother, you know, we were like 11 months difference with my older sister, 13 months with my younger sister. So it was very, very tight.
Oh, the girls, you were really close.
In those days.
Yeah. Yes.
And we are very close to this day. They're delightful and wonderfully fun people.
Is there anything you'd want to share about your mom?
You know, in my family, it was like, you know, my father was a patriarch, but he was a very loving person. I mean, growing up, I felt like they were so supportive. They're just wonderful people. My mother was, you know, she had to adjust to a new country. She had to adjust to doing things. It was a different world. She didn't have any help here. You know, over there she had chauffeurs and cooks and other things, and she had to kind of have to say, but she said American people have been so kind to her and everything like that. But so, mother was, you know, it took her longer to learn English. She was a little more reserved. She was very, very beautiful and, you know, elegant, and, you know, it took her a little bit longer to adjust. My father, on the other hand, was just the most wonderful, outgoing person. I mean, people came. All the Argentines came through, you know, every doctor from South America ended up at my house. We would have impromptu get-togethers. You know, they'd all start dancing the tango. I mean, my father hosted everybody that came, you know, and helped so many people. He was well known all over Latin America, not just in Argentina. And so he was a very outgoing person. And mother was more behind the scenes.
She was the quiet one.
She was, but she's the one that made things happen. So to some degree, it repeats itself here, because my husband is the one that's out front. He's meeting people, doing stuff, and then, you know, 60 people show up at my house, so I have to make it happen. So, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, I've worked more behind the scenes on the how aspect of things, you know. Here we have this grand idea, how are we going to make it actually work, you know. What are the steps to get there, and that kind of thing. So I've always felt that my contribution has been more along those lines. Which
are very important, those kind of contributions, I might say. So you finished high school, graduated from a Catholic school.
Correct.
And then you went into college right away, or?
Yeah, because I mean, Duchesne Academy was a wonderful place. It was all, you know, we wore white gloves, we curtsied, we spoke French, and all that kind of stuff. So we were trained to be proper young ladies, and that kind of thing. So
Was it an all-girls school?
it was all girls,
Okay.
definitely all girls. And we wore uniforms, and we could not wear makeup or anything like that. But it was high academics. They really stressed academics, so that was good.
That's wonderful. So after that,
Yeah.
you graduated, you went right into college?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because the nuns were kind of praying that I wouldn't get into Rice University.
They were
because
praying?
they were kind of afraid that I'd lose my faith.
Oh,
okay. And it is kind of what happened. I did get in. It's a very competitive school. I went to architecture school, and it's really, even today, one of the top 5 in the whole country. It's super good. And
can I just ask, what inspired you to go into architecture and not medicine, or like your father?
Because I have this artistic side to me, you know, and although I never really did like math, people say, a lot of people say, well, I couldn't be an architect because I don't like math. I said, well, it has nothing to do with math. It has to do with design, concepts, you know, systems, other kinds of things. You know, the math is formula. You know, how you're going to design a beam? Well, you just follow the formula, and then you know that the beam is going to make the things, you know, hold up. So architecture is just a very exciting field. I've always loved it. Love it to this day, you know. And I think I knew I wanted to be an architect when I was 12.
That's pretty good.
And that's an excellent school.
So you went there, and what happened during your 4 years there?
Well, you know, the school was so special. I mean, okay, when I first went there, it were some funny things because the school was highly technical. It had a lot of engineers. And so I came from I had no typical high school experience. I didn't do all that kind of stuff that other people knew in high school. So I come with this nun school with uniforms and everything like that, and I get to Rice University, and that was just like a whole new thing. There were much fewer women in there, and especially in the architecture school. When I first started, there were 45 men and 3 women.
Wow.
When I graduated 6 years later, there were 25 men and me. So in those days, they did restrict the women in there. I remember when I first went to tell the head of the school of architecture, I said, I want to be an architect. And you know what he said to me? You're not going to believe it.
It's not a job for women.
He said, we are a professional school here. We're training architects and not architects' wives.
Ooh, he wouldn't get away with that today.
No, but what's amazing is he went on to head the National Endowment for the Arts, but don't ask me how that happened. But anyway, that was the attitude in those days.
But it didn't discourage you.
No, it didn't. It was a challenge, you know. There were 3 of us that were at the top, and I was one of those. And then, of course, I got derailed, of course, because here I had been, you know, in this very perfect environment, and all of a sudden, you know, it was like there was so much going on and everything like that. And, of course, I got involved in everything. And I hate to even admit it, I was homecoming queen and all that kind of stuff.
Why would you hate to admit that?
Well, I want to say that in my school, you didn't have to go, like, promote yourself or make banners or anything. Since it was small enough, you just got elected, and all of a sudden, that was great.
Well, there you are. Not that many women can say they've been homecoming queen, so that's wonderful. Now, when you graduated from there, did you actually go into the field? Well,
what happened was my thesis project, which was got funded by a federal program called the Model Cities Program. And what it was for a community-owned and operated shopping center in the barrios of Houston. It was just a great concept, a great design. We spent a year, my partner that had done the project with me, and you know, we set up an office there in the barrios, and so for a year we tried to make it happen, but we just couldn't get all the pieces together to, you know, in a way we were kind of moving into being developers. We had to, you know, for our shopping center we needed to have an anchor, you know, a tenant, and nobody wanted to do it in the barrio. So we, you know, but in the doing of that, we got to know some of the political people there. We got to know the barrios. There was one man doing this in the church. He was making these incredible murals, and I connected him to my, you know, my art people in the other world that I lived in. you know, because I was also operating in another world at that time too. So I was, I was in the social arena.
Well, I'm sure, and yeah, I know that cloistered feeling and protected feeling of being in the Catholic Church, and then all of a sudden you're out in the world and you're this beautiful young woman that's also very brilliant. So I'm sure you had a lot of people after you and just life enticing you. That's pretty amazing what you were trying to do at 21 years old.
Yeah, it was an amazing
about it.
project. To this day, I wish that somehow we could have made it happen.
Did anything like that ever happen in that area?
Not really, not really. It's just that I don't know, to this day I keep thinking, well, maybe we could have done, if of course, if I knew then what I know now, we could have made it happen, I'm pretty sure. But, you just do the best you can.
So because of what you were just sharing with me about getting more into the world and just experiencing that part of life, did you forget about your faith in Christ at that point?
Well, the other thing that happened concurrently with that is like the whole world opened up, because like I got involved in all the social aspects. I went to all Houston is very social. I mean, Houston, here's what happened. The Houstonians had a lot of money through the oil, and then they decided they were going to buy culture. They did that. So when we were there, they had Leopold Stokowski come and conduct the symphony. They had Mies van der Rohe design the extension to the museum. So at that point, I got involved in all of those things. I got involved in raising funds for the Contemporary Arts Museum. I was at the opening of the Alley Theater. I was at the opening of Jones Hall. I was part of all that art scene, all the social scene. I was involved in, I even called people up when they were building the medical center, which is so world famous now, with Dr. DeBakey, who my father worked for, and everything like that. So I had to call people up, because at one time the idea was, let's spread the hospitals all around Houston. And then somebody said, no, that was one vote option, and the other one was, let's put them all together in one center. So I was calling people up, let's make it all together for one center. And
all right, we got you to maybe about 22 years old. And what happened at this point?
A couple of other things happened, okay? Right. One was that I entered a competition for a magazine called Mademoiselle Magazine that was a Condé Nast publication that catered to the college girls. It was a first-class, fabulous publication. And every year they selected 20 girls from around the country, and they became guest editors for the August issue, which was the college issue, okay? Well, to do that, you had to go through, you had to submit projects. You won the projects, and then they went around the country. I didn't know that. The last 40 ones, they went around the country and they interviewed people around you.
To really get to know who you
are. Yeah, and then they selected the 20. Okay, and so for that one, I remember the reason I entered to begin with is they gave you suggestions, about 50 different suggestions of what you could do. So the one that was intriguing to me was, you have a 12 by 12 room, what are you going to do with it? I thought, oh, wow. So I said, they said 12 by 12, but they didn't say how tall it could be.
Right.
So I made it into a tower. And I made it into a tower. I put mirrors on all the walls, and I had these cruciform columns going up, and it had these velvet steps, open stairs, and it was just one big kind of Moby strip thing, and then it went down the other way, and then it had these big plexiglass things. It was a jewelry display thing. So it wasn't a bedroom, fabulous. It wasn't anything else. So I came out, and so I won, and I won with that one. And then another thing I had to do was, I decided that I loved the hardware stores. I thought the hardware stores are so exciting. It's just like so much potential. You walk in there and it's like, wow, all the things you could do. So that's what I did. I did a piece on all the things you could do with things in the hardware store. And I made a chess set of nuts and bolts. I decorated, boxes with those, those things that you use for roofing, round silver things, and I just did all kinds of crazy. Oh, I made jewelry out of chains and things. And
now, did you actually do this or suggest doing it?
No.
You actually had to do it?
I laid it all out. I mean, I laid it all out. So the thing looked like a magazine piece. So I had photos of all the things, and I had, it was like, which kind of got me into trouble because when I got to the magazine, they assigned everybody to different positions. And so I was all excited. I thought they'd give me a good position. Well, they gave me copy editor. I went like, copy editor? How discouraging. I said, why did you choose to put me copy editor? And they said, well, you know, some people could just write and it just did great, so they ended up in the writing part. Some people could only do the art and they ended up in the art department. But you could do everything. I said, oh, no. Well, anyway, but I had a super fun time. And then I convinced the publisher that what they needed was a movie. Because, see, I've been into this movie thing for a long time somewhere. I said, well, we need a movie. I already made little movies on my own. I had made some little documentaries on my own. So I had another girl that went to Yale. No, she had gone to, no, Smith. There was no Yale at the time. We had separate, you know, men and women colleges at those days. So anyway, she had gone to Smith, and she was also a filmmaker. So we convinced them that they needed a film of this, you know, this whole experience of the 20 girls, and they took us to Israel. They took us all the fashion stuff. We, you know, we interviewed important people, whatever. So here I was with my little camera. Kodak gave us the thing. It was Super 8, and we went around and shot the whole thing. And at the end of it, Pat and I, Patricia and I, got to stay because we convinced them we needed to edit this thing. So when everybody else headed back, we spent the whole summer in New York with our own office on the Vogue floor.
What a great experience.
We had so much fun doing that.
So a whole year in New York.
No, it actually turned out a whole summer in New York.
Okay.
You know, it was several months. Instead of the 1 month, we ended up stretching it 2 more months. How fun is that? We had so much fun. So I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and you know, I mean, having dinner with, you know, Alan Shepard and talking to him about walking on the moon. I mean, you know, David Merrick, who was a major producer of a lot of things, you know, the Bushes, and, you know, I just met all the people that, you know, were doing interesting things. At that time, you know, I happened to be in that scene that I could, you know, knew a lot of people like that, so.
When did Ted come along?
He had graduated, and his, you know, his father said, don't get into this business. It's just a tough business. You know, he grew up in the entertainment industry, and so his father was an actor and everything. And so Ted was a dutiful son, and he went off to law school to do something sensible. And as soon as he was through with law school, he headed off across country he had already written a script for which, to this day, he regrets not having sold to somebody who wanted to buy it, and he was the head of one of the studios.
And he didn't sell it to him?
No, because he said, oh, well, I want to make it. You know, he did one of those Sylvester Stallone. That's probably the only story that I ever worked on. But, I mean, that it ever worked. I mean, to this day, that's what he advises people. He said, get your foot in the door. You got the majors saying they want your script, you go with it, you know.
Right.
But at that time, you know, he was being independent, and so he rejects that offer from one of the majors, okay, who happened to be also a friend of Papa Baehr, so, you know, we had connections, but it was a good script. And so he and his friend, Peter, who had also graduated from him from Dartmouth, after law school, he heads out across the country in his Toyota Land Cruiser to try to raise money and get this movie made, okay? And as he's going across the country with his best friend Peter, he has this recurring dream. And he's telling Peter about this dream and about this girl and everything like that. So they went to Houston, and they stayed at the architect's house where I was, you know, working. I was working in this big firm of like 200 architects. After I finished that stint with the Model Cities thing, I ended up doing two things. I opened up my own office with 3 other guys that went to school with me. It was called Architects in Cahoots, because for some reason Houston loved me, and so every time I did something, there was an article about it. So there was an article about my opening my office, all with photos and everything.